Good morning. Great to see you all. This room is a little tight for this many people in one space. Councilman Flynn tells me this is called the Square Tunda. Apparently, it is not actually a rotunda, but honored to be here together. Thank you so much for joining us. We're delighted to be here together to talk a little bit about some of the city's most urgent priorities. I want to start with a huge thank you to Council President Torres and Council President Pro Tem Sandoval, who have been key thought partners and allies in the development of what we're going to talk about today. We've had the chance to visit with all the city council members who have been, I know, talking about the importance of this issue in their communities, with their constituents, on the campaign trail, in the city council chambers. We're delighted to be joined by the city agencies who have been leading these efforts in every facet, both our team from Host as well as all of our public safety partners who have been really focused on how we focus Denver on this issue around homelessness. And what we know is the issue of people living unhoused on the streets is the most significant issue the city faces right now. It is a human rights challenge because we know we have people who are right now living and dying on the streets of Denver. We know we have people who need access to support and services who can't get them. We know it is a public health challenge. We know it is an economic development challenge. We know all of the key visions we have for the city revolve around making sure those folks that are most at risk right now can get access to the services they need. And so today we are here to announce a process we want to commit to make this the city's top priority. That means doing a couple of things. Today we will sign a declaration of emergency here in the city of Denver to declare an emergency around homelessness. That will involve a couple of things. That will involve, first, we will activate the Emergency Operations Center here with Matt and our leadership there to get that activated as part of our response. We will set a goal, which is the target is we want to get 1,000 people who are currently unhoused access to housing before the end of this calendar year. That is what we're committing to today. What we know is today is the start. Today is the start of a process to dedicate city resources, city personnel, the leadership of the city council and of the agencies against that target. We also know we want to do this in partnership with our communities. So we will also announce today a 78 neighborhood tour we will do across the city, led by the council members, to be able to sit down in each neighborhood, talk to residents about what resources and supports they can bring to this effort, what questions they might have, and what roles their neighborhoods might play. We will be looking at an all-of-the-above strategy on housing. That means we are looking to build on many of the successes the city has used already. We will try to move people that are currently unhoused into housing units through rapid rehousing or access to available rental units or leases. We'll be calling on landlords and property owners all over the city who have units that are available to partner with us to get people access to those units. We'll be focusing on hotel conversions, places with our existing hotels that have units we can convert to make available and accessible. We will work in partnership to make those ready and provide the wraparound search to make them successful. And we will be focusing on parcels of land in the city where we can open micro-communities, where we can bring tiny homes that can offer both the dignity and stability of housing and shelter, plus also access to bathrooms, kitchens, showers, all the core services, including the wraparound services around mental health and addiction and long-term workforce training to get people back up on their feet and back to be contributing members of society. So that is our focus that we're talking about today. We'll also announce that we are bringing in 10 mayoral appointees to our office directly to lead on this effort. They'll be directly partnering with the city council members to lead this outreach in communities, to lead the partnership with providers around the city to build up the services and supports we need to make this possible, and to make sure that we have alignment across all of our agencies and all of our departments and our community input. Those are the key priorities. We have worked together with some partners to identify potential sites where we think if we do build micro-communities, those would be accessible. We have identified a list of 197 currently publicly owned sites that could be potential uses. Those will be conversations we'll be having in neighborhoods around the city to get their feedback and input. And we know that there are other privately owned sites that could be used if needed beyond that. And so I think the important message from us is this is day one. This is what we think the most important crisis the city is facing. Many of us talked about this when we ran for office and had a charge when we took the oath yesterday to commit to taking on this problem. And this is our commitment that we will do it in a unified way. We don't have all the end answers to what the final structure will be, what our goal will be. We will bring together the nonprofit community, the business community, our public leadership, the providers in this city, the faith community, and say we are all in this together, and we all want to be supportive of making sure we can deliver a Denver that we think serves well those who need the most supports. So thank you so much for being here, and I will take some time to answer any questions you might have over the next handful of minutes.
Mayor, why is this emergency declaration needed? Can you talk a little bit about what specifically
You bet. So the emergency declaration is needed for a couple of reasons. One is it does help us work to access resources both at the state level and potentially at the federal level. But more importantly, it helps us focus the work of our city around these outcomes. We know that to be able to identify locations, to be able to rehab them, to retrofit them, to be able to permit them, to be able to get construction up on those sites is going to take a tremendous amount of effort and speed from our internal agencies and our external partners. And the power of the emergency declaration allows us to move much more quickly and swiftly through what could otherwise be slower regulatory processes for some of that leadership to happen. So those are the key priorities, I think, for us. It also sets a real message to all the rest of the city that we are deeply focused on this. We want their help, we want their voices, we want their involvement, but we plan to act and act with urgency.
And what's the cost of this emergency declaration, and where's the money coming from?
Yeah, so there's no cost in the declaration itself. There is just the path of getting to the units of housing that we'll provide. I've laid out previously that we know there are resources at the state level that are the last tranche of ARPA grants that Laura and her team at Host have been preparing for us to apply for, so we plan to aggressively pursue those state dollars to bring them down. We know we have current dollars in our city budget that are allocated to this purpose already. And then as we build the portfolio of solutions that are going to come forward, whether they are current rental units, whether they are hotel conversions, whether they are micro communities, those will have different cost structures. As we get feedback from the community, we'll know exactly what the combination of those housing options are and what the cost is. But we are confident that through both our city resources, the state resources, private sector and foundation support, if they choose to engage, we'll have the resources we need to make this happen.
Mayor, what do you do, and congratulations on day one.
Thank you.
What do you do with those who will not leave the streets? You know, we've seen in past sweeps, we've had people talking about the fact that there are homeless men and women on the streets of Denver that do not want to leave. What do you do with that population?
Yeah, we've seen really consistently from conversation with local leaders in the unhoused community. I'll, by the way, be spending a lot of my time directly in conversation with folks who are unhoused. That's the balance of my time today. We'll be in conversations with folks who have this lived experience to help understand what their needs and priorities and concerns are. What we've seen both from surveys and outreach in Denver as well as around the country is when you have really dignified, stable housing to give people access to, the great overwhelming number of people that are currently unhoused want those services. That's 90% plus in many cities and also in some of the surveys we've done here. So I think there's reason to believe that, you know, people have concerns potentially about some of the congregate shelter settings. People might not want to go into a shelter because you can't bring your service pets or you can't bring your partners, or there may be other restrictions that are in the way. We don't see nearly as many of those restrictions when people have access to single, private shelter or housing options. And so we have a lot of faith that if we can provide those high quality units, we will see overwhelming demand to enter them. And we'll continue to work with public safety here, with Denver, with Department of Public Health and others on what the broader set of wraparound services we will provide to folks who have the most acute needs around mental health and addictions. We know those needs are present, but we have real evidence to support that housing first as a strategy will get the great majority of people access to the supports they need to then access those following up services. I'll also add that these sites, all of them, as we structure them, whether they're scattered site housings, whether they are micro communities or whether they're hotel conversions, will have access to the wraparound services like addiction treatment and mental health support. And so that also is a really critical need that often when people are in stable housing, they're much more likely to access resources than they might when they're worried about daily needs of living on the streets.
Put it to a soundbite for us all. What is the ultimate goal here?
The ultimate goal is we want to have a city where no one has to sleep on the streets. And I think we want to make sure we can get people access to dignified and stable housing. And we know that the biggest part of that challenge is being able to work with the community to both finance and build and develop and site that housing so we can get people off of the streets where they're stuck and into housing where they can get access to services. So today is really a start of the process. So obviously I'm still finding the bathrooms in this building, and so we have a lot to work on together. But what we do know is that we will start, the first part of this is really the community engagement process, is going to neighborhoods and talking to community members and getting their feedback. And the city council will really be lead on that entire process. They'll be the ones partnering with us to set up conversations in neighborhoods with community members to get feedback that's most important. I talked to the entire cabinet this morning. We had a full cabinet meeting before this, and so every agency leader is apprised and ready to be engaged and supportive. Our Emergency Operations Center will be standing up this week, and Matt will help identify who the most important senior department leads as well as department directors or deputy directors will be involved in that process. But we will envision that all of the city agencies will be involved in some capacity.
Mayor, you're promising to end homelessness by the end of your first term. Denverites have heard other city leaders and other mayors
Yeah, this is about how we take courageous steps to start what we know feels like a very intractable challenge. I talked about yesterday, I think the biggest problems we face in a democracy are giving into the notion that somehow we think problems are unsolvable. And I think there is work that this city has done and cities around the country have done to show that there are solutions out there that we know work. What we want to do is now scale those solutions with real deliberate speed. And so our point in time count is somewhere around 1,400 people right now that are chronically unsheltered. If we can get 1,000 people housed over the next 6 months, that would put us on an incredibly successful pace to be able to meet the whole need that is out there. We know that this work will not be done, will not be completed, will not be over in the process of this emergency declaration, but it will be a chance for us to galvanize all the leaders in the city to take courageous action to start the work that we think can lead to dramatic outcomes.
Mayor, you're surrounded by city council. What power does an emergency declaration give you if you don't need city council approval for? And what power does city council have to jump in if need be?
Well, the City Council is one that will need to approve and continue, that will need to continue this emergency declaration. It comes into power for 7 days. They will need to extend it, decide how long to extend it, decide to keep it in operations. And so I think they'll have oversight over all of the budgetary approvals of these expenditures. And so they will be the most important partners in making all of this happen. We'll have a lot of conversations, including right after this one at Mayor Council meeting, about the details and the structures and the process. So I'm looking forward to being shoulder to shoulder with them both today and at every stage of this process, because they will be most important voices.
Mayor, are you confident that this kind of work, this specific plan will be able to succeed? Other plans have, I won't say failed in the past, but have had different challenges of their own. Why is this plan going to succeed?
I think we have the benefit of the wisdom of our past experience over the last 10 years, and a lot of leaders in this building, including folks at Host, have led a lot of really compelling work to show what is successful. And what we know is if you get people access to housing, and in that housing you provide the wraparound services that people need, whether that is mental health support, addiction treatment, workforce training, you give them a unit that's got an address that they can put on a job application so they can get back up on their feet. That has worked overwhelmingly well. There are projects that Host and partners in the city have led before with that kind of structure, where we've gotten people that were currently unsheltered into housing, and a year later, 86% of those people are still successfully housed. This team in the city has done that. We know that works. We now need to put the resources and the focus behind scaling that to many more of the people that are currently struggling. But I think we now know from the work we've done what the solutions are that work. We now are going to galvanize the political will to execute and scale that system across the city. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I think this is also where we learn from successes, which is we have seen when you give people access to housing in these micro communities or others that do have the wraparound services people need. So that includes mental health or addiction or workforce training, also includes staffing or security around the clock, so there is a presence to be able to provide support. And there are rules. You still can't commit acts of violence. You still can't engage in criminal activity on the grounds. But mostly what we find is when you put that support around people, they then do very well with then getting access to the job they couldn't get. I've talked to someone who was unhoused a couple weeks ago who, had a job and then stayed in a shelter overnight, got his phone stolen, and now can't get a hold of his boss to know what shift to show up for. And so he's back in the same challenge of he needs a place to stay where he can store his stuff, where he knows he can shower before he goes to work, he can get there on time, and he can get himself back up on his feet. If we get those right sets of services in support of people, I think our data is they can be very, very successful. 2 more questions, yes. Thank you for that question. Our focus really is on folks who are currently living unsheltered and folks that often are living in encampments around the city that are trying to get access to housing. We do know there is a whole continuum of housing need. It is, of course, important to stay focused on folks that are in congregate shelters and folks that are living in vehicles and people that are in housing but just barely able to pay the rent. We don't want those people to slide out of housing back into homelessness. And so we will keep pushing on the entire continuum, but this entire focus is on people who are living outdoors, who are unsheltered, who are in encampments, who we think are at the greatest risk to themselves, and that we think pose a real opportunity for them to get back on their feet and for us to get back public sidewalks and spaces where all of the city has access. So that will be the dedicated focus, but we will not stop, obviously, the work the city is doing around the rest of that continuum.
Is this Denver's Road Home Park too? Is this Denver's Road Home Park too?
Do you want to jump in? I can answer that too, but Tony?
You know this problem is not specific to Denver. It's regional, it's a
Yeah.
national issue.
Yeah.
How do you prevent Denver taxpayers from paying for the problems in other adjoining cities where you
Yeah.
can partner with Aurora, Mountain Community Schools,
Yeah.
other places that have a similar problem?
Yeah. Thank you. So I'll answer, I think, both of these together. This is about a bunch of leaders in this city who care deeply about this issue, who have run for offices to lead on this issue, have a passion and commitment and experience and expertise to lead on this issue, and they want to see us take real action. That's true for residents across the city too. And so this is our commitment day one to say, we hear you, we agree with you, and we are ready to put all of our energy and effort of the city behind delivering a solution for this. What we know is there are a couple of preconditions that have led to this, and you see this in cities around the country. When you have cities that have great economic growth and are suddenly very desirable for people to move here, as Denver has become, then you don't have housing stock that keeps up with that growing demand. You get rapidly unaffordable housing. And when you get rapidly unaffordable housing, you have more folks who can't afford to live someplace. When you have real crises and people that are struggling with addiction or mental health, and we don't have all the infrastructure we need to support those people, you have the perfect storm of both unaffordable housing, lack of supports around mental health, lack of supports around addiction, and you get an expansion of people who are struggling enough they end up unhoused. That's what we know exists. We know this needs a coordinated effort to respond to this. We know it will take all of the leaders in this building and outside this building to take it on, and we are in to do that. That is what today is about. We know it doesn't end today. We know it starts today, but this is our joint commitment to say we are at it on day one. We'll be at it on day 2 and day 3 and day 4 and every day until we can fundamentally transform the way the city feels for those people who are unhoused, struggling to get their lives back together, and for those folks who are trying to launch businesses or build their community in a way that they want to both make sure people have the compassionate support they need and that we have a city that can thrive for all of us. That's what today is a commitment to begin on, and we're excited to continue this work with you on the days ahead. So thank you so much for having us.